Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux. Welcome to the DRF Race of the Day. Finally, we have a race of the day. It's Saturday's Grade 2 Canadian at Woodbine. Let's throw up the field. We're trying to escape Hurricane Debbie, which is now Tropical Storm Debbie, which has besieged the east coast of the States. Woodbine, though, we look like we're going to be running on Saturday, maybe with a wet turf course, but it's a nice one-turn event for fillies and mares at 1 1/8 on the E.P. Taylor turf course. Moira the 7, the morning line favorites, on the van as we speak, down to Colonial Downs for a date in the Beverly D. And it appears that two of her other main competitors in the Canadian, Mission of Joy and Liban, are going to go with her.
And I think from a betting perspective, sure, that does hurt the horse count in this field, but I think it's a great betting race. I think it's wide open. Some of those big names going elsewhere opens up the board a bit.
And it changes the pace dynamic just a little bit as we take a peek at our Timeform US pace projector. Liban, who might be running in the Beverly D, expected to go there, probably would have made the lead in this spot. With her out, Full Count Felicia, the 3, might be able to make the front without much impediment, and she had to go pretty fast last time out.
She did, and I think kind of looking at this, Elysian Fields probably gets a trip close to it, as we've seen a couple of times throughout her career, especially in her last 2 efforts. She's been fairly close. I do wonder about some of the horses in here, such as Five Towns and a couple of others that typically get a mid-pack run, if they will be a little bit more forward so that a horse like Full Count Felicia doesn't get away with it very easy.
And keep in mind that this Timeform US pace projector will refresh and update once scratches are made official on Saturday morning. Let's start things off with the number 1, Forever Dixie. Just a consistent runner coming out of a good edition of the Trillium on a synthetic surface. Let's watch the stretch run of that race right now. And Forever Dixie is going to be splitting horses in the 2-path. Really good late run, because you're going to notice she's going to steady when this horse on the lead sort of drifts out in front of her and she still keeps going. Fashionably Fab's also in this race. She's on the outside coming with a determined bid. I just think this Trillium sets both of these horses up very well for the Canadian.
It does, and obviously the surface was different, right? Not on the turf, but I think looking at both of these fillies, they were able to hit their best strides late. The winner solo album is the stablemate to Forever Dixie. Went on the front end and stayed in front. But, I mean, it was pretty close all in all still in the end. I do think this one will take another step forward. And for her, I wonder, based on some of her figures, if she's a little bit better on the main track at Woodbine compared to her turf races. She is just 1 for 4 in the career on the turf. But I can't take anything away from her. I thought in her last 2, she's been able to pick it up with each of them, especially last time out.
Millie Girl, the number 2, is one of my favorite competitors up at Woodbine. She's good on turf. She's good on synth. And I think she's rounding herself right into her best form. This will be her 3rd start of the year. Good effort last time out in the Nassau on the turf. Let's take a look at Millie Girl's 3rd place effort. Now, she really doesn't have a ton of early speed, so it's really dependent on the pace to be hot and for her to get a trip. But once she gets out into the clear, this is what Millie Girl does in most of her starts. She kicks late.
I think the big thing is she's coming out of a mile event. I do think 1 1/8 will help her. Maybe she'll be able to be a little bit more forward, even if the fractions are going to be softer at this longer distance, at the 9 furlong distance. But all in all, she finished up very nicely here. The debate for her is, you know, the turf versus the synthetic. I mean, some of her performances where she's been able to kind of mow them down late have been on the Tapeta up at Woodbine. But I can't take anything away from her. I thought she had a tremendous year last year as a 5-year-old mare, and a little bit of a late bloomer. She got a little bit of a late start to the races, but it's never seemed to hurt her. And at least for her, I mean, she's coming in here off of one of her best figures.
Now, in that video we just saw, the pace setter, the 3, Full Count Felicia, was able to get to the front in that race. And when you break down the fractions, she had to really work hard through that 2nd quarter mile, sub 23 on the lead while facing pressure, and she hung in there till late in the game. It might be a different pace scenario for her this time, especially with Liban out. Maybe she gets to the front and backs down those fractions. She's a proven graded stakes competitor on the lawn.
She is. She's got some really good turf races. She's well-traveled, and she's been able to do it over a variety of turf courses. I think the other thing to maybe take into consideration last time out, she went to the front in her last 3 efforts prior to that, before that layoff. She wasn't as close to it, and obviously the fractions weren't as quick as either in 2 of those 3 races. So I just wonder, she was just tired after all of that. That's a long and kind of a layoff from just a standpoint in general, but then to go against that competition off a layoff, I think was a tall task. I think all in all, though, she raced very well. And as we talked about from a pace perspective, she's at least intriguing.
Forever, after all, I think is a very strong competitor in this race for an excellent trainer in Brendan Walsh. She ran so well 2 starts back in the Grade 1 Gamely, and look who won that race. Anisette, who we'll see over the weekend in Southern California. She's probably the best turf filly and mare middle distance horse on the West Coast, and she'd be the favorite in this race with the big 3 out. Her last start was okay, second in the Anchorage. I thought the horse on the lead had a big advantage that day. Forever, after all, just to me fits this class like a glove.
And she's a mare who's blossomed for the new connections. They said we're done with the dirt. We're just going to race her on a synthetic surface or the turf, and it's worked out really well. She doesn't have a turf win yet, but I thought her performance last time at Churchill was very good. You mentioned the winner and next out winner, and again, you've talked about the Gamely. Anisette, she's not that far off of her, a length and a half. So very curious to see what's going to happen. She was 6-1 on the morning line, but as we mentioned, Moira's going elsewhere. I feel like a horse like the number 4 Forever, after all, will take a little bit of play.
What a season the 5 Elysian Field had last year. She won the Woodbine Oaks, then placed in 2/3 of the Canadian Triple Crown. Of course, second in the King's Plate over the Synth, but then a really good effort in the Breeders, going 1.5 miles on the turf at Woodbine. Her last race might be an indication that she's rounding herself back into form. A good stalking win in Allowance Company over the Synth.
Yeah, I'm going back to the Breeder Stakes. It was a wild stretch run in that event. I think kind of looking at her, she might have been a little tired at all in all, but she came up just a nose short behind Touch and Ride, who I think in terms of the three-year-olds last year, a very nice horse for Chiefswood Stable on the grass. And I have really nothing to knock. I think maybe she needed that race at the Belmont at Aqueduct meet. She didn't really fire in there. I don't really know, other than maybe needing a race off a little bit of freshening, what the excuse would have been, because she was in that perfect spot where she usually likes to be. So to see her then come back up to Woodbine and get a win under her belt, I think was what she needed. She was able to beat Wickenheiser, a filly who she had to face quite a few times in 2023. So she's another one. I think her figure is maybe a touch below a couple others in here, but you can never count her out. She's just a very consistent type.
Graham Motion entered a couple in here. It looks like the 9 Mission of Joy goes to Colonial Downs to compete in the Beverly D. 5 Towns, though, going to be a better price contender for Graham. And I watched the Dahlia 2 starts back right on the wire at Laurel Park. And watching when they turned for home, you could tell she was loaded and ready to go. She was just locked in with nowhere to go. And you had the feeling all Ruiz had to do was get out, and she wins. Ruiz got out. She exploded to win. And I'm not going to hold the Gallarette against her last time. I thought it was the softest of soft turf, and she took on a legitimately good horse in the rock-solid Fluffy Socks.
Can't knock her, and she was clear of everyone else in the field, so I'm not going to hold that against her at all as well. You mentioned that the turf course at Pimlico that day had a lot of moisture in it, and to me, I don't think we've seen her best yet. I feel like she even raced well in her North America debut down at Gulfstream Park. Thought she had some trouble there, and to see her since then, she's taken a step forward each and every time. So at a horse at 12-1 on the morning line, I think she's one of the live, if you want to call them, long shots in this field. And I think, deciding to stay here and this one stay here and the stablemate goes elsewhere, I think that's probably the best move for the motion operation.
I wonder if getting back to 9 furlongs helps the 8 Star Fortress. We'll move past the 7 Moira, who's expected to go in the Beverly D. Star Fortress, after all, earned a triple-digit Beyer speed figure in her North American debut. That was going 9 furlongs over a wettish turf course at Churchill Downs. She hasn't reached the winner's circle since, but I think she just aimed a little bit too high in the New York, a tough Grade 1. Her race 2 starts back to Sheepshead Bay was very good. Cherie DeVoe knows how to place her horses. Star Fortress is a strong late threat.
She is, and I mean, the barn has had an incredible last year or two. They've really picked up a lot of steam, and the quality of their horses has just gotten better and better. It seems like maybe every 6 months you see some new faces in the barn. And to see the way that she won when she came over, it spoke a lot about her, and that's why they went in some maybe lofty spots. And then you can see she took play in her next 2 starts, and she didn't perform all that well. Even when I was on site for the Hillsborough, she needed more, and that was a weird race. There was really no pace on paper or anything. Sparkle Blue and a couple others just did what they did because of the lack of pace in that spot. So to me, she's a little inconsistent, but I can see what you're saying, Dan. I mean, she's been in some really tough spots this Grade 1 event several times now. This should be class relief for her. I just wonder, looking at the performance back in May, is 1.125 her game? Does she want to go a little bit further than that? That would be my one question with her.
Mission of Joy, the 9, was third in the Diana, just a game, 2 starts back, legitimately good performance, but it looks like she's heading down to Colonial. So let's move to the 10. Fashionably Fab, one of the most consistent fillies and mares on the ground. She won, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row on turf and synthetic before her most recent start, the race we showed earlier, the Trillium, where she was a little bit late to change leads, but she gave her a customary kick. She's only raced once on turf, but no problem. She won that race. I think she actually classes up pretty well with these horses.
I think so too. And I mean, yeah, she lost her win streak last time. She snapped it, right? She had a good win streak, whether it was dirt, turf, or synthetic, she had it going on. And obviously she had just had to face a little bit of a different competition last time out. Forever Dixie was able to beat her. And I thought the thing that I liked about the stretch run and the Trillium, she looked to me like she was getting out, getting a little tired, and then she found that other gear that she needed. So I think that'll help her at the mile and an eighth trip. And the one thing she lacks compared to others is maybe the turf experience. Her turf race just comes on the inner there at 7.5, but I don't think the distance will be an issue. And you wonder if Fashionably Fab will be pretty close to maybe the pace setter in here in the form of the 3.
The 11 Liban is expected to go down to Colonial Down. So before we take a look at our top selections, click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Let's take a look at our top picks in this race. We're kind of all over the place, and understandably so. You can make a legitimate case for 5 or 6 of these horses, including both of our top picks. 5 Towns, I think we still have yet to see her best.
That's my thought process. And full disclaimer, even before the scratches or the potential scratches were announced, we were still all over the place. I thought this was a really good betting race. And for me, that's where I think with the scratch of Moira, who would have been my top pick, you go for a price in a field like this. And you said it. I don't think we've seen 5 Towns' best. I don't really dislike her performance last time out. She was second best behind Fluffy Socks, who would, in my opinion, tower over a field like this. So I like her, and I'm hoping we can get some value. But Graham Motion, Frankie Dettori teaming up, I'm not sure that'll happen in necessarily 12-1.
Full Count Felicia, I think, is going to be very dangerous on or near the lead in here. I think that was a really good fitness builder. First time for the barn last time out in the Nassau. She's really proven at a mile and an eighth as well. Watching her down in the States when Brittany Russell had her, she has a really strong burst of speed on the turn. Maybe she creates a little bit of separation, turning into the long EP Taylor stretch. 3-1, 10-2 for me, 6-2, 4-3 for Ashley. What an edition of the Canadian. It's Saturday's race of the day. It's at Woodbine. Good luck.